Hey everyone, you're listening to Fantasy Uptick. I'm Jeremiah Blue, and today we're going to be talking about a half point PPR, 12 team Superflex mock draft. With that, let's jump right in. I'm so pumped to actually be talking football again. The last couple of videos I've done baseball and basketball because we got sports back, which is great. I am a little bit nervous that we're even going to get football based on the fact that it's been kind of nuts over the last couple of weeks with baseball. Now, basketball did a bubble, so they're doing fine, but I know football can't do a bubble. So we're going to see what the football ends up doing, getting all this new information as far as with baseball's doing. But for this draft, we're going to proceed as normal. I'm going to assume that everything's just the same as it's always been, and we're going to get a full 16 game season, and we're going to move on with that. I am going to do a show at some point to talk about how we should go about setting up our rules for this season, and just like most fantasy leagues, based on the fact that the season could end early. One thing I was thinking about was basically just going off of points and almost like roto style, except it's just a big giant everybody's playing each other every week point system. And then maybe the top, however many playoff teams you have, like my league of record, I have 14 teams, 7 teams make the playoffs. Maybe have the top 7 point leaders go into the playoffs just for this particular season. And then we do a head-to-head once we get to the playoffs if we are even in that scenario, which would change, I guess, strategy a little bit. Players like Deshaun Jackson, who I already kind of like, but like those boomer bust guys would have more value based on the fact that you're not really playing a week, you're playing a season. So anyways, that was one of the things off the top of my head. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about playing your leagues that way. And then maybe once you get to like week 8, once you're to week 8, then it's official. As long as everybody knows ahead of time, we're going based off point leaders at the start of the season, I think people would be all about it. You don't want to make your rules after the season gets canceled, because then, especially when you got money on the line, those kind of things. The same thing in baseball. Everybody should know the rules going into the draft. So anyways, that's what I was thinking. But for this draft, we're going to assume that this is going to be a 16-game season, that there's not going to be any cancellations due to COVID or any of that stuff. I will take the COVID into consideration when I talk about players like Ezekiel Elliott, who's already had it. He's a guy that I would be targeting because he's already had it. I think it's less likely for him to get it. At least that's what I've read. So let's go through this, right? Super flex. So obviously quarterbacks are going to be going way earlier than they would normally go. Actually, 2 of the first 3 picks are Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Christian McCaffrey. I've got Mahomes and Jackson ranked very similarly in a 4 points per passing touchdown league and a 6 point per passing touchdown league. I definitely have Patrick Mahomes, but Mahomes recently lost starting offensive lineman. It's close enough to where I'm starting to think about moving Lamar Jackson over. But for me, if I'm wasting a pick like this on a quarterback, I want him to be a safe pick. And of the 2, believe it or not, I actually think Patrick Mahomes is safer for the simple fact that he's probably less likely to suffer a major injury that would affect him throughout the whole year. I mean, if we go back to like Russell Wilson, and I know Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson are completely different, but remember when Russell Wilson was playing with bad ankles, it kind of took away his running ability. Cam Newton has had that problem in the past. So Lamar Jackson relies so much on his legs that any kind of nicks or bruises could actually cause his value to drop. So if I'm going to pick between the 2, I probably am right now leaning towards Patrick Mahomes, but I have no qualms if you're leaning towards Lamar Jackson. They're close enough for me that it's really the minute little things. And like I said, for me right now, it's the fact that Patrick Mahomes has lost an offensive lineman. I'm almost moving him behind Jackson, but not yet. Now, I think Christian McCaffrey, even in this format, should probably go first. Any kind of half point or full point PPR, he's got such an advantage on the other running backs in the league. And if you want to say Saquon Barkley's close, because remember Saquon Barkley just 2 years ago was awesome. And then you got Alvin Kamara, who catches a lot of passes, Dalvin Cook. But the thing is, you're not going to get one of these guys on the back end. So the difference between Christian McCaffrey, who you take with the first pick, and the guy that you'll get when it comes back to you is just too wide a margin for me. So I'm definitely taking Christian McCaffrey in basically any type of scoring format. So I think that was a mistake here on this mock draft. I think there should have been McCaffrey first. I have no problems with Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson going 2nd and 3rd in a super flex league, because obviously everybody should be starting 2 quarterbacks. So if you just do the numbers, 12 teams, that's 24 quarterbacks should be starting every week. That's not even taking into account bye weeks And if you miss on the quarterback, every quarterback should be owned in a super flex league, or at least they should. Every quarterback that has any value at all should be owned in a super flex league. So let's go through this. Saquon Barkley goes fourth. Again, no problems with that. I honestly don't have any problems with Saquon Barkley going second there either, and then Mahomes and Jackson going at that point. I think there's a significant gap between Barkley and basically everybody else. I like Elliott, and he should probably be on the same tier for me as Barkley, but the reason he's not is because of the new coaching regime, and I'm just kind of curious if they are going to kind of lean on Elliott the way that Garrett leaned on Elliott, where he's like the full workhorse every down back. I mean, Tony Pollard showed that he's pretty good, and how they're going to utilize him. I actually think they're going to utilize him better, but I know the way they're going to utilize Barkley in New York. So again, I have him in basically just a different tier there. Elliott, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara. I got Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that tier now. Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon are all kind of mixed into this tier in the half-point PPR. Like, I like Derrick Henry. I like Joe Mixon. That's probably where it gets really confusing for me, because I think Joe Mixon's going to be a lot more involved in the passing game. But I feel way more comfortable with Derrick Henry getting touchdowns. As you see here, Alvin Kamara falls to me at the 10 spot, which is pretty crazy. I have not seen Alvin Kamara fall to the 10 spot, but that has to do with the fact that Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson went in the top, 3, which really means that's more of Alvin Kamara falling at the 8 spot, because those two guys would usually not be taken in that spot. But more receivers went than typical in this draft, which that's the thing with mock drafts. You never know how they're going to play out. Alvin Kamara falls to me at 10. I'm like, okay, I've got to take Alvin Kamara. This wasn't even a question. He's got the ability to get those 1,600 yards. I feel like pretty safe that he's going to get around 1,600 yards, assuming he plays 16 games. He got that. He almost got that last year, and he was playing in 14 games. And if you take week 17 out and take all the healthy games that he played, he was right on pace for that, because week 17, again, he didn't play very much in that game. And then there was obviously, he missed 2 games in the middle of that. So the 13 games that I kind of took into consideration that Alvin Kamara actually played in, I had him projected to be right around that 1,600 yards. He's gotten 81 receptions the last 3 years in a row, which is an odd number for him to land on every single year, but he has. So I think there was actually signs of him actually improving, even from those years where he was like the top 4, because he was back-to-back number 4 in fantasy. But a lot of that had to do with touchdowns, and the Saints are going to score touchdowns. So when I'm comparing him to a lot of the other guys, being the fact that he catches the ball out of the backfield, I'll take Kamara. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is an option here, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire is unknown. Even though I think he's going to be great, give me the floor of Alvin Kamara. Then you come around, Derrick Henry was a guy that I was considering here, even with Alvin Kamara. But when you're talking about that half-point reception, we're talking about a 60 reception gap almost at minimum. I would almost imagine that Alvin Kamara ends up getting closer to that. This could be the year he jumps like Christian McCaffrey jumped, where he's touching that 100 receptions. And Derrick Henry, even if he improves a little bit, is not going to be anywhere near that. So again, it's just when you're talking about receptions, there's a big gap. I would bank on Derrick Henry scoring more touchdowns than Alvin Kamara, because they're going to lean on Henry in the red zone. That being said, Alvin Kamara is obviously capable of scoring a lot of touchdowns. He's on what I would imagine is a better offense in New Orleans. And New Orleans consistently finishes 1, 2, 3 in the offense over the last decade, it seems like. So again, I'll take Alvin Kamara there. I don't really think there's much of a discussion for that. It comes back around. I was actually thinking about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, all around the same tier. But I've taken a lot of Joe Mixon, so I wanted to take some Derrick Henry in this scenario. Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, again, this link goes back to touchdowns, right? So Derrick Henry's usually gone by the time I take Joe Mixon. Derrick Henry's going to have... I feel more confident that Derrick Henry's going to get touchdowns. In fact, if I had to guess, I would probably pick Derrick Henry to lead the NFL in rushing touchdowns, because I know they're leaning on Derrick Henry in the running game. The style of offense is built for Derrick Henry. If I had to guess, he's probably going to lead the NFL in rushing yards. The difference is he doesn't have the production in the passing game. That being said, again, I think the touchdowns that I expect him to get make up for a little bit of that, because most leagues touchdowns are worth 6 points. And even in a half-point PPR, they will catch it a little bit. And Joe Mixon's on the Bengals, and I don't know how much they're going to score. I love Joe Mixon. I think the Bengals are going to be better than advertised, but that offensive line is still a question mark. They still have a rookie quarterback. Being that this pandemic's going on, Joe Burrow is not going to get the opportunity to have a normal training camp. So, again, in these early rounds, you want to take the highest floor with the ceiling. So Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, I think they all have the same ceiling. Even Saquon Barkley, right at this point where I kind of rank them is based on their floor. And that's why Joe Mixon falls for me here, because I think he's got the lowest floor of all those guys I mentioned, with maybe the exception of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They could always bring in, like, Devontae Freeman's still sitting out there. That's a guy that I'd be worried about coming to Kansas City. Because, again, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, as much as I like him, and I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I was actually, this is the first time I've talked about it, but doing a deeper dive into Damian Williams, even before he opted out, there was a lot of stats that kind of pointed to Clyde Edwards, that he wasn't as good as maybe I thought he was. Because, again, if you watch the playoffs last year, he really balled out throughout the playoffs, and especially in the Super Bowl. But a lot of his yards came on, like, 3 plays. So, other than that, he didn't average too many. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about Damian Williams because he's not there. But what I'm saying is, if they don't trust Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be a complete workhorse, because remember, he is still a rookie. They're not going to get a lot. They're not going to get as long a training camp based on this pandemic, where they're not going to get to do a lot of the same things they would normally do based on this pandemic. They might go out and look at a guy like Devontae Freeman. And the closer we get to the regular season, you get a lot of veterans that get cut just in general. Remember, LaShawn McCoy got cut last year, and the Chiefs went out and got him, right? So I think that might be something to consider. So, but right now, today, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I have him on the same tier as Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, and Barkley. I got them all really in the same tier. The only one that's kind of out is Christian McCaffrey. I would prefer Barkley over all those guys pretty significantly. But then after that, it's basically they all have the same ceiling. It just varies on their floor. And I think Joe Mixon probably has the lowest floor based on being on the worst offense. And we're already seeing what Derrick Henry can do. His floor is a little lower because he doesn't get involved in the passing game. Clyde Edwards-Helaire's ceiling is pretty low based on the fact that he's a rookie, and we don't really know what we're going to get out of him. Alvin Kamara shares the workload there in New Orleans, and then really Zeke and Dalvin Cook are the 2 guys that you would imagine are kind of the workhorses on their team. Dalvin Cook has injury histories, and Ezekiel Elliott, he's got a coaching regime change, which I don't think is going to be a negative. I think it's going to be a positive, but we never know with those kind of things until we actually see it, right? So that's basically all the risk you're taking there. Again, I think all the ceilings of these guys are pretty similar. It's just really the floor. So I go Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry. And I have no problems with people really getting one of the quarterbacks they like. The difference is, if I don't get one of the top 2 quarterbacks, the difference between Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Jackson, Josh Allen, and, say, Carson Wentz, who I end up getting, I don't see as a big gap. Whereas I see the running back drop-off is pretty significant after the second round. So for me, I had to go running back here based off of where I was and the 2 quarterbacks that were already taken. Comes back around, I get Carson Wentz. I was really hoping to get Matt Ryan here, and I ended up getting Brady, right? So when we talk about Wentz, a lot of people aren't really high on Wentz because over the last 2 years, he hasn't honestly been all that great. But in 2017, he was on pace to be the MVP, right? The Eagles were good. That was the same year they won the Super Bowl. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl with Foles. So obviously that offense was really good. It wasn't all on Wentz, but Wentz threw 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and he had rushed for just about 300 yards, 299 in 13 games, right? Now, obviously those numbers were going to be way better if you would have added 3 more games. I think that offense right now, or that team just in general, it might be better than the 2017 team. So what happened to Wentz in 2018? Well, 2018 he was coming off the major injury that he suffered in 2017, right? 2019, while Wentz was fine, the rest of his team was banged up. He didn't have anybody to throw the ball to. They had to run 2 tight end sets basically the whole time. It was Ertz, Goddard, and no one, right? So basically he had no receivers. They had no one who could stretch the field for the Eagles, which really made things easy for the defense, and yet still they made the playoffs. As much as I hate the Eagles, Wentz is a great quarterback, and I think this year with Deshaun Jackson coming back, Alshon Jeffrey coming back, adding Jalen Reagor, their offensive line is healthy. Miles Sanders is no longer a rookie. He's a sophomore, so another year of development for Miles Sanders. I think that offense is going to be absolutely great. Plus, they went out there and they fixed the defense in the secondary, which was their biggest weakness over the last couple of years. So I think this is going to be a championship level team, and I think when you put Wentz in a situation where he's not having to like play hero ball, I think he can be more efficient. And this is a team that's going to pass the ball. I think Wentz has got the talent. At this point, I like Wentz. I like Wentz more than Josh Allen because I like to lean more towards real life good quarterbacks. And this is why a lot of times I like to play Superflex, because when you're playing in a single quarterback league, there's so many quarterbacks in free agency that it doesn't matter who you get. And I'll talk about this a little bit more when I talk to Brady. But when I got at the Brady pick, which is my next pick, I had to make a decision because I actually think that the better fantasy player this season is probably going to be Cam Newton, right? But being that I know if I miss on a quarterback, there's not going to be quarterbacks out there in free agent. I'm going to have to throw darts at guys like Drew Lock, which I end up doing here in a second. If I take Cam Newton or I take Tom Brady, and again, I think Cam Newton's got more of an opportunity to be a superstar quarterback, right? So I might take Cam in a scenario where it's just a one quarterback league because I know I can go and get another quarterback. Rodgers will probably be on free agency at some point. Stafford will be on free agency at some point. People aren't drafting these guys, so I can easily just replace Cam if he ends up being a bust. But in a super flex league, I have to go safe. And I think of the two, I think the floor of Brady is way higher than the floor of Cam because Cam could actually just lose the job. You know, he's on a new team. He doesn't have a big contract. Brady's not losing his job to anybody. And he's surrounded by a lot of weapons. Again, so what I'm relying on when I talk about Cam Newton is his legs. And he had that one MVP type season, and he could do it again on the Patriots. I think they will utilize him that way based on the fact that they're not owing a lot of money. I like Cam. I would love to have Cam in a single quarterback league, but in a two quarterback league, where I'm taking quarterbacks and what I need out of them. Again, I want to eliminate risk. Like I was saying with the running backs earlier, I want the ceiling with a high floor when I'm talking about these high draft picks, right? And for me, the fourth round is still a high draft pick when I'm taking a quarterback because Carson Wentz, Tom Brady, Alvin Kamara, and Derrick Henry are going to start for me every single week for this mock draft, right? Tom Brady's got a higher floor than Rodgers, Stafford, and Cam for me with the same ceiling of all three of those guys, right? So again, that's why I go Tom Brady at this spot. So it comes back around. Again, this is going to be, this year, the position scarcity, if you're talking about a super flex league, is going to be quarterback. It's always quarterback in a super flex league. There's only 32 starting quarterbacks. Again, when we did the math earlier, that leaves 8 quarterbacks if everybody's got 2, right? So 24 quarterbacks are off the board. 8 quarterbacks are available to be backups. So again, that's always, there's usually more than 8 bad quarterbacks in the NFL starting at any given time. So quarterback is always going to be a position scarcity when you're talking about super flex leagues. But the drop off between the top tier running backs and the back tier running backs is pretty significant in almost every format as well. So this is basically my last chance to get a really good running back. If I don't take a running back here, obviously I need receiver, I need tight end because I don't even have those positions filled. But I decided to go with my third running back. I have a flex spot and a super flex spot. So I am going to start James Conner. So again, I can start up to 3 running backs. So I go with James Conner here because James Conner was being drafted in the end of the first, beginning of the second round last year. Really, the only thing he needs to do is stay healthy. And as of right now, he's healthy and he's going to be the starter. That's going to be a good offense. Roethlisberger's going to be back. I kind of throw out how bad they were last year because Roethlisberger wasn't there. So I think James Conner is a steal at this spot. I didn't really consider anybody else. Raheem Mostert would be a good option. The 49ers are good, but he was working with that contract situation. I think it's resolved now. But you still got Coleman there, so it's not completely his. You're relying on the 49ers being an elite rushing offense, which they are. And again, it wouldn't be a bad pick there. David Montgomery, I have a lot of faith in, but he was terrible last year. James Conner, I've seen how good he can be if he's healthy, the offensive line's healthy, and then offensive clicking. So I'm going to go James Conner in that scenario, right? Then I come around. Zach Ertz is still here. I do like getting one of the elite tight ends I've talked about. I want one of the six tight ends. At this point in the draft, Zach Ertz, Darren Waller, and Evan Ingram are here. If I don't get Ertz here, and let's say I take another quarterback or a receiver like AJ Green, I will end up going Evan Ingram with my next pick or the pick right after that because I want to make sure that I get a tight end. I go Zach Ertz because I was like, okay, I don't want to. I would rather have Ertz over Ingram because Ertz has been doing it for a long time. And again, I've already talked about how much I like Wentz, and I like that stack honestly. Wentz, Ertz stack. I got no problems with that. Right? Comes back around. I end up going Drew Lock because really this was the last good third quarterback that I saw on the board. I didn't think another one would make it back to me. Drew Lock, obviously Denver went out and got all sorts of offense this year. Melvin Gordon's there now. Jerry Jeudy's there now, who people think are one of the best rookie receivers to come out of the draft in forever. There's a lot of weapons there for Drew Lock to really take a step after having that first year. We kind of sat behind Joe Flacco all year long, or he was on the IR for most of the year. But yeah, so when he came in, he seemed to be pretty solid. I like Drew Lock coming out as a rookie. I thought he should have gone in the first round. So again, I'm buying in on everything the Denver Broncos are doing. Drew Lock, he's basically my backup. I have an injured play quarterback in Carson Wentz, and I have an old quarterback in Tom Brady. If he is how good I think he is, and again, here I'm going upside because I've already got my two starters. So I go upside with Drew Lock. If I needed a starter here, I'd probably go Rivers because obviously I know what I'm getting out of Rivers. But again, I wanted to go upside, so I went Drew Lock here. Then we go Stefon Diggs. The fact that he was here, this is why I wait at receiver. If you notice, this is the first receiver I'm taking. Stefon Diggs is fine. Stefon Diggs can finish as a top 20 receiver, which is great. He's in a situation that is not great. I don't really love how good of a passer Josh Allen is, but it's not much worse than what he was in with Kirk Cousins. Again, he's going to be the number one receiver. They traded a lot for him. They're going to target him. I think he's going pretty late in drafts. So I'm fine with Stefon Diggs here. I think in this kind of league where being that every quarterback's going to be owned, running backs are already hard to come by. I don't need another tight end because I got an elite tight end. I think receivers are going to be available in free agency. And that's just kind of the way I'm approaching it because it is a super flex league. So again, every quarterback's going to be owned. So all those quarterbacks that are typically in your waiver wire, they're going to be on rosters, which means somebody has to come off those rosters, typically going to be a receiver because people already have their receiver set and people are sitting, handcuffs to running backs and all sorts of stuff. So typically I can find decent receivers week to week on the waiver wire. So I don't necessarily stream them, but I worry less about receivers on draft day because they're also very easy to trade for. Drew Lock, if he's as good as I think he is, and he finishes in the top, he's a top 24 quarterback, that means that somebody else does not have a top 24 quarterback because I have 3 of them on my roster. And then I could trade Drew Lock for a receiver or whatever if I need to because somebody's going to have too many good receivers. It happens every single year. And I literally get this done every year where I attack a position of scarcity, say James Conner as my third running back, which again, running back, everybody agrees that position is pretty scarce this year. I could trade James Conner for a receiver before my playoffs. I can kind of let my team play out. Receivers I could stream throughout the year, get enough wins to get into the playoffs. Every year I trade for a receiver. Every year I wait for a receiver. It happens every single year. One team out there is going to have too many good receivers. So we come back around. I end up getting Brandon Cooks. Again, I just took the best receiver on the board at this point because at this point I do need receivers. I did think about taking Ronald Jones at this spot, but I thought there was a significant drop-off between Brandon Cooks and basically all the other receivers because Brandon Cooks is a Pro Bowl level type receiver. He's in a new offense. I actually like I think he's in an upgraded offense because while he's got a split time with a bunch of other receivers, I think Deshaun Watson's a better quarterback than Goff. I think there's a bigger hole missing with Hopkins leaving. So I'm not saying that he's the one who fills that hole. I think obviously if I had the choice, I'd probably take Fuller. If I had the choice, I would take Will Fuller, but I think Brandon Cooks and Fuller, there's not going to be much of a drop off there between the two of them. I was actually hoping for Jamison Crowder to drop here, and he did not. So I go Ronald Jones with the next pick. Ronald Jones I've come kind of full circle with Ronald Jones because when I was going into the actual draft, I was like, basically any rookie that gets drafted in Tampa is going to have an opportunity because Bruce Arians hates Ronald Jones. And the reason I was thinking that is because Ronald Jones can't pass block. At least he couldn't last year, right? But the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, he's still a young running back. He's going to develop. He knows the system. And we're talking about a rookie as the other guy. I'm not too worried about LaShawn McCoy. At this point, the upside I get from Ronald Jones If he's the feature back for that offense, I think I have to take him again. I already have 3 running backs. It's not like I'm having to rely on Ronald Jones. Obviously, at this spot, I did think of CeeDee Lamb because I've only got 2 receivers. I could have gone either way. I think the upside of Ronald Jones of being an elite running back this year, because he could be an elite running back. I've always liked Ronald Jones' talent running the ball. I don't think he's as bad a receiver as people make him sound. Like, I think he only had 1 drop last year, if my stats are correct. And he made a lot of big plays that got called back. So when you go back and watch games, the one that jumps out of my head is the LA Rams game, the LA Rams game, the Tampa versus LA Rams. He had like a 58-yard run, and that got called back, and another like 30-yard run that got called back. So a lot of those stats aren't necessarily true about Ronald Jones. The one stats that do jump out at me that are true is how little playing time he got with Barber as the other guy. So that is makes me nervous, but I'm banking on the development at this point. I'm completely off the Keyshawn Vaughn bandwagon with LaShawn McCoy. I think LaShawn McCoy, if there is an issue with pass protection, it's LaShawn McCoy's backfield, not Keyshawn Vaughn's at this point. Now, they didn't go out and give him $7 million or anything. They gave him a $1 million contract. So I still think this is Ronald Jones' team. And the fact that they didn't really do anything other than bringing in LaShawn McCoy, which is a $1 million back, makes me think that there is some sort of development there with Ronald Jones, right? So that brings us to the last 4 picks of my draft, right? So I go, obviously, receiver is really my only hole at this point. I feel confident at running back, feel confident at receiver. I feel confident at quarterback, even in a super flex league. So I need to just basically go out and get the best receivers available. I go with Justin Jefferson, which is a guy that if you watch my rookie draft, I'm probably lower on than everybody. But the fact that he's here, he's going to see like at minimum 80% of the snaps for Minnesota at receiver. So I have to take him here. Say somebody's going to benefit from the loss of Diggs. It's going to be Justin Jefferson. While I don't think he's as good a pro or a good a prospect as everybody else is thinking, the opportunity here is obvious. So you got to take Justin Jefferson at this spot, right? Comes back around to me. At this point, I go Henry Ruggs. And the reason I go Henry Ruggs is because I think that Henry Ruggs could lead this team, the Oakland Raiders, in receptions. If nothing else, I would bet on him leading it from the receiver standpoints. Obviously, Waller's there, so Waller is going to get a lot of targets himself. But if Gruden is trying to get Ruggs involved and get him short, intermediate passes, I mean, Henry Ruggs is lightning fast. He's going to be able to get touchdowns. He's going to have big games. This is a guy I am targeting late if he's here. I'm not necessarily targeting him, but he fell to this point. I need a receiver. I went ahead and took him. I already had 3 quarterbacks, but Tua Tagovailoa was still here. So I was like, I'll take a 4th quarterback because I can sit Tua on my roster for a little bit. And if he starts, the hype's going to go through the roof and I can flip him, or I can see how it plays out and then flip one of my other quarterbacks and keep Tua on my roster, right? Comes back, obviously I go defense because that's the last spot. I went ahead and took kicker off of this setting just because I don't really care about kicker. I'll take whatever kicker. I usually don't even draft the kicker, and I usually will I'll hold somebody or I'll drop somebody right before the start of the game and pick up my kicker for the week. But Buffalo is a team that plays the Jets in the first week and then Miami in the second week. So that's kind of what I do when I go after defenses. I try to target who's playing a garbage team in week 1. Philly actually went right ahead of me. They're playing the Redskins, who I think are just going to be a train wreck. So, again, I'll go with Buffalo, who's got a 2-week easy schedule, and then I'll figure out my defense, kind of stream it from there, right? So here is my grade. So my draft grade afterwards. I know a lot of people like to look at that kind of stuff. So here's my roster. I go starting quarterback. I go Carson Wentz. And again, I'm always going to start a quarterback at my super flex spot because it doesn't make sense to not start a quarterback. So I got Brady at my super flex. My running backs, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry. As you see, I also have a flex spot, so James Conner. So again, I go 3 running backs in that scenario. This is a half-point PPR, so it doesn't, I mean, you could start a receiver there. I just feel more comfortable with running backs, and running backs seem to get hurt a little bit more than receivers, so if Derrick Henry goes down, I can just move James Conner up and then approach my bench if I need a receiver or something like that. So and then I got Zach Ertz, who I feel very comfortable with. Any kind of half-point PPR type scenario, I like Ertz because he just gets riddled with targets from Wentz. And then I got Diggs and Cooks here, which again, I like Diggs. Cooks is obviously the weakness of this roster, but he could be good being that there's so many targets available after the loss of Hopkins in Houston. And I do think Cooks projects to be the number 2 receiver there. And I go Drew Lock as a backup. Again, I go quarterback heavy. I'm kind of a quarterback hoarder when it comes to Superflex leagues. I like quarterbacks because, again, these are the players that other people are going to need the most to make a change. And even if maybe my receivers are just god awful and I need a receiver, then I can always flip Tom Brady and I don't have to rely on them being able to send me back a good quarterback. I need receivers. I got good quarterbacks on my roster. Quarterbacks are going to maintain trade value throughout the entire year in Superflex leagues. And that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. It's like, maintain your trade value. So Ronald Jones, again, I have him as my 4th running back. I think the upside there, again, this is an upside play. I go floor early. I went upside late. But I actually believe in Ronald Jones. I think he's going to be the leading running back for Tampa Bay this year. Justin Jefferson and Henry Ruggs. Again, these are upside guys that I think are going to be on the field a lot. They have the talent. And even though I'm lower on Justin Jefferson, like if you go back and look at my top 10 rookie receivers for the year, I'm a little bit lower than him than most people. But I don't hate Justin Jefferson. I do like Justin Jefferson, as indicated by the fact that I drafted him on my roster. So real quick, I'll kind of go show you my team in comparison to everybody else's team. Again, I'll put it right up here on the screen for you. Let me know what you guys think, which one of us won. That's it for today's show. Thanks for listening. Let me know what you think about my draft. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. If you like the content, remember to like and subscribe. And until next time, see ya!